narrowing. Dusky and weird on the starboard hand stretched leagues of now risen sand. 2 men only were on deck; the moon was quenched under the vanguard clouds of a fresh squall. A madcap scheme danced before me. The time, I must know the time! Crouching low and cloaking the flame with my jacket, I struck a match. 2:30 a.m. The tide had been ebbing for about 3 hours and a half. Low water about 5. They would be aground till 7:30. Danger to life? None. Flares and rescuers? Not likely, with "him who insists" on board. Besides, no one could come, there being no danger. I should have a fair wind and a fair tide for my trip. Grimm's coat was on the skylight; we were both clean shaved. The helmsman gazed ahead, intent on his difficult course, and the wind howled to perfection. I knelt up and examined one of the davit tackles. There was nothing remarkable about it, a double and a single block, like our own peak halyards. The lower one hooked into a ring in the boat, the hauling part made fast to a cleat on the davit itself. Something there must be to give lateral support, or the boat would have racketed abroad in the roll outside. The support, I found, consisted of 2 lanyards spliced to the davits and rove through holes in the keel. These I leaned over and cut with my pocket knife, the result being a barely perceptible swaying of the boat, for the tug was under the lee of sands and on an even keel. Then I left my hiding place, climbing out of the stern sheets by the after davit, and preparing every successive motion with exquisite tenderness, till I stood on the deck. In another moment I was in the cabin skylight, lifting Grimm's long oilskin coat. A second's yielding to temptation here, but no, the skylight was ground glass, fastened from below. So on with the coat, up with the collar, and forward to the wheel on tiptoe. As soon as I was up to the engine room skylight, that is to say, well ahead of the cabin roof, I assumed the natural step, went up to the pulpit and touched the helmsman on the arm, as I had seen Grimm do. The man stepped aside, grunted something about a light, and I took the wheel from him. Grimm was a man of few words, so I just jogged his satellite and pointed forward. He went off like a lamb to his customary place in the bows, not having dreamt (why should he?) of examining me, but in him I had instantly recognised one of the crew of the Kormoran. My ruse developed in all its delicious simplicity. We were, I estimated, about half-way to Norddeich, in the Buse Tief, a channel of a navigable breadth, at the utmost, of 200 yards at this period of the tide. 2 faint lights, one above the other, tinkled far ahead. What they meant I neither knew nor cared, since the only use I put them to was to test the effect of the wheel, for this was the first time I had ever tasted the sweets of command on a steamboat. A few cautious essays taught me the rudiments, and nothing could hinder the catastrophe now. I edged over to starboard, that was the side I had selected, and again a little more, till the glistening back of the lookout gave a slight movement, but he was a well-drilled minion, with implicit trust in the old man. Now hard over! And spoke by spoke I gave her the full pressure of the helm. The lookout shouted a warning, and I raised my arm in calm acknowledgement. A cry came from the lighter, and I remember I was just thinking what the dickens'll happen to her, when the end came, a euthanasia so mild and gradual, for the sands are fringed with mud, that the disaster was on us before I was aware of it. There was just the tiniest premonitory shuddering as our keel clove the buttery medium, a cascade of ripples from either beam, and the wheel jammed to rigidity in my hands as the tug nestled up to her riding place. In the scene of panic that followed, it is safe to say that I was the only soul on board who acted with methodical tranquillity. The lookout flew astern like an arrow, bawling to the lighter. Grimm, with the passengers tumbling up after him, was on deck in an instant, storming and cursing, flung himself on the wheel which I had respectfully abandoned, jangled the telegraph, and wrenched at the spokes. The tug listed over under the force of the tide; wind, darkness, and rain aggravated the confusion. For my part, I stepped back behind the smokestack, threw off my robe of office, and made for the boat. Long and bitter experience of running aground had told me that that was sure to be wanted. On the way I cannoned into one of the passengers and pressed him to my service, incidentally seeing his face and verifying an old conjecture. It was one who, in Germany, has a better right to insist than anyone else. As we reached the davits there was a report like a pistol shot from the port side, the tow rope parting, I believe, as the lighter with her shallower draught swung on past the tug. Fresh tumult arose, in which I heard "Lower the boat" from Grimm, but the order was already executed. My ally the passenger and I had each cast off a tackle, and slacked away with a run; that done, I promptly clutched the wire guy to steady myself, and tumbled in. It was not far to tumble, for the tug listed heavily to starboard. Think of our course, and the set of the ebb stream, and you will see why. The forward fall unhooked sweetly, but the after one lost play. "Slack away," I called, peremptorily, and felt for my knife. My helper above obeyed, the hook yielded, I filliped away the loose tackle, and the boat floated away. Chapter 28